Archaeologists have made a startling discovery, a mass grave in Tulsa, what they believe to be the remains of victims of the 1921 race massacre there. At least 12 bodies in a spot the city had no record of anyone buried. Nearly a century ago, a white mob attacked and wiped out the area in Tulsa known as Black Wall Street. Experts estimate the mob killed as many as 300 African Americans and wounded some 800 more. Local coverage now. Sierra Pizarro of NBC station KJRH live on scene. Sierra, how's the city of Tulsa coming to grips with this?
This is an incredible moment for the Tulsa community, one that's acknowledged by Mayor G.T. Bynum today.
I'm thankful for the citizens of Tulsa who have reversed nearly a century of the conventional wisdom of this being something that we don't want to talk about and that we just want to put behind us and pretend like it never happened. This generation of Tulsans is not doing that.
Mayor Bynum visited this site yesterday, and today he's not the only one. Crowds have gathered all week here at Oaklawn Cemetery to watch the work being done here. Some say they're even surprised that the investigation has come to this point where they're actually digging up soil in search of the victims of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. Descendants have even stopped by. One of them tells me he didn't know his family was impacted by the attack until later in life, and that's because his family, he says, was so traumatized by what happened. They didn't want to talk about it, Shep.
Yeah. Sierra Pizarro, thanks so much with the excavation right behind her. Let's turn to Dr. Carrie Stackelback. Carrie is an archaeologist at the University of Oklahoma working on the excavation and with us live. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
How stunned were people to find that this was there and no one had any clue?
Well, so I think absolutely it's definitely come as a surprise. It is not unusual to encounter unmarked graves in a cemetery, especially a historic cemetery, but certainly to have encountered this number of unmarked graves in the large trench that we've excavated is quite surprising. Yes.
Carrie, you were just in a meeting, I understand, with descendants of the massacre victims. What did they say about this dig?
They have questions for us. They're clearly very interested. I think they're quite pleased with the fact that we have made this step and that we're making progress. But understandably, everybody is starting to ask questions about the next steps and where do we go from here.
What are the next steps? I mean, are they planning on exhuming the bodies or what?
That is the next step is what we are going to propose is that exhumation would be the appropriate thing for us to do. However, we have a series of logistical issues that we have to address in order to get to that point, and that will take us a certain amount of time for us to actually get through all of that, including getting the appropriate court order that would allow us to perform the exhumation. And then we would also want to make sure that we are appropriately addressing the need to maintain the preservation of those remains while we undertake the analyses, the specialized analyses that will allow us to confirm if, in fact, we are looking at race massacre victims.
Wow. Is there an idea about whether people will ever be identified? Is there a process that's reliable all these years later?
There is a process. So DNA is available as one technique to try and identify
if there's a match from way back then.
But that would be an extremely challenging process, and this we understand. And that's part of that logistical consideration that I referenced earlier has to do with that. One of those things is that we have to put together an appropriate strategy to actually try to even accomplish that. And there are a number of things that would have to be addressed in order to do so. Obtaining the samples from the skeletal remains is somewhat easier. Doesn't mean that it isn't itself complicated, but that is quite a bit easier than the other end of that, which is to then identify an individual who would provide a sample that can be identified as a match to our skeletal remains, especially when we're talking about multiple generations on.
Sure. Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.